Hey folks, welcome back. In the last video we created this track here from scratch, and we will continue on this one also in a future video. But in today's video I want to create some kind of sweep or riser from the scratch in the grid. And also you can change this, how it sounds on the fly, by just pressing a button, so it's also highly generative. I wanted to show you how this track sounds here. Right, so we have here this first sequence and then the second sequence, and we want to transition from this sequence to that sequence. And what you usually do, sometimes you use these kind of riser samples. So you go to a library, a sample library, and you get some riser you like, and then you put it in here in front of the drop. Right, we drop here at 33 mark, and then we put in some riser here to ramp up the intensity and then drop into the next sequence. And I want to show you how we can create this here with kind of a grid preset. So here I created something and I want to show you the end result to this. So let's enable this here. Right, so we create this kind of riser sound here. And it's perfectly in time. It's also on the right place. It's synchronized to the BPM, and you can generate a different sound. So we can hit here this generate button and see how this sounds now. Or something different. Right, so it's always kind of a different sound, different riser sound, and it's perfectly synchronized, and you can also bounce this. So if you want to have here a sample, for instance, or at this place here, just go to bounce and create some kind of riser sample. Also you can see it's doing with both these. So here we have now a sample we can use or maybe treat differently, right? And then you hit your generate, and then you generate a new one. So you can create nice little, oh, it's actually, it's muted. That's why it's not working. So you can create some samples you can use maybe also in a different project. Bam. So, okay, so we all know now what I mean when I say riser, right? So it's this ramping up of a signal, and yeah, I'll show you how we create this in the grid. So just mute this here, or maybe you we go to a different empty project here. And inside of the grid, let's take a bully grid here. You have a nice little tool, and that's the phase in here. And I take also here an oscilloscope. And the phase signal is a perfectly made signal exactly for that, because it's ramping up and it's synchronized to the BPM, right? So it's perfectly in sync with the transport. And we can also click here on an empty space, and we can say we want to have the signal, instead of 1 bar, we want to have it over the course of 2 bars. And now this one is longer. You can see the ramping up takes some time. And it's exactly what we need. We need this for the volume modulation, and maybe also for changing the intensity of the sound, or changing up this LFO BPM or speed setting over time, right? So it's a perfectly nice signal. We also have some tools in the phase category of the grid, so we can take here the band and say we want to have here some kind of slope on the fade in. As you can see now, we slowly ramp up here the signal. So this is also possible to use these phase tools to create some more interesting things. We can also say instead of a riser, we want to have a impact, so we can reverse the signal. So now we start with the impact and then slowly going out here in time. Okay, so we can create these kind of modulation signals here easily inside of the grid just with 3 of these modules. You can also say we have a select here, and we use this one here and this one here. So we can use a button and switch between these 2 inputs and can say this is here the direction, and when it's on it's an impact, and when it's off it's a riser, right? So now we have a riser and this one is an impact, right? So we can see we have impact here and then we slowly fading out over time. And we have also a band signal, so we can also create here a macro and call this, or maybe modulate it here by 1. Create this kind of shape. You can also use a button here. Modulate direction. Call this direction. And now we have a riser, and this one is an impact. Okay, so easily to configure this stuff. Okay, what else? So maybe pull this down because I like to have this small little slope on there. So now we have this, we can create some kind of sound. So we start probably with the noise, white noise. We can also make the stereo if you want to. Maybe a filter, SVF. And the SVF is nice because we can switch here between band pass, low pass and high pass pretty easily. We can also disable here the key input because we want to modulate this anyway. So we can take here already the signal of this and can change the frequency of the filter. Maybe pull this down here to, let's say we want to start at 80 Hertz or maybe C1, 64 Hertz here. Maybe also pull down the resonance. And we can now use the noise in here, also the output. Go to band pass. Okay, so now we have the filter modulation, and we also want to change the volume probably, so we want to mute this. In this stage I want to mute the audio, so we just take a multiply here and take the output of this. So we have 0 here, 0 multiplied with the signal equals basically, yeah, it's muted, so there's no volume there. So now we have this. So we have this nice volume modulation and also filter modulation over time. It's like exactly what we want. So now we can concentrate basically on some of the fancy aspects of this riser tool. We can also say if the playback is stopped, right? What it is at the moment. We want to mute the signal. So we use the select here. Put the output into the second input, and then we use a transport play module here. So this only gives out the gate when the transport is playing. So every time the transport is at stop status, then no signals passed. And when we hit play, we have a signal. So now we can increase here maybe the resonance to get some nice sweeps for this. Okay, so when we now go here to the grid and just bounce this out, post fader, we hear exactly nothing for some reason. So we probably oh, it's way here. Okay, so we have to take this longer. So something like this. You can see it's perfectly in sync here because of the phase signal. So the phase signal takes care of all the synchronization basically. If you say, well, this is I think the sweep here is way too short, or it happens way too often, you can go back here to the grid and you can say, I want to have this over the course of 4 bars now. So now we have 2 sweeps here, but over a longer course of time. So you can see the sweep itself is longer, and also the synchronization is basically a bit, yeah, it's not that often. It's stretched out. You can also say 8 bars. Now it's even longer. So you can decide what kind of riser or sweep you want to have. We can also take here this band and maybe use a second one, which bands the band even more. So now it's for some longer time you're quiet, and then suddenly it rises. Takes a bit of time. So maybe bounce this out here and see how it looks like. See, now we have this yeah, shorter time frame here where it rises up. If you kind of like the sound, it's shorter, but still it's still over the course of 8 bars here, or 2 8 bars, or 16 bars. So all I wanted to say is the phase signal is taking care of all this stuff of making it synchronized to the grid, and it's pretty easy to do just by changing the device phase of the grid itself. So we have now here the sweeping thing. Maybe what we also can do is maybe bring in here an LFO, and the LFO itself can also be quantized here to the grid, right? 16 node grid, and we can maybe modulate here the resonance over time, right? Maybe pull this down at 2 bars again. Get something like this. That's also nice. Or we can use a different LFO to change maybe the frequency. Something like this. 8 notes. So let's see how this sounds. Right, you get a different kind of feel for the riser. And then what you do in the end, you create all these kinds of possibilities, and you then go in, use a trigger and the dice module, and you get the idea. Also a modulator. And then you modulate here basically the speed settings. Maybe instead of what we have here 60 note, we start maybe at half note, and then we go 2 down. Then we can trigger this and end up on something different, quarter note, half note. Yeah, we can trigger this again, and then we end up here on half note, 8 note, and so on. So maybe we go 4. Okay. And the different here, and also change this for that. Here we start on half note also go down 4. Every time we trigger this, we have a different setting for these LFO settings, right? Maybe you can also say here, instead of modulating this directly, pull this down and pull this down, and then use an attenuate output here and here. Then use a modulator out for that, and we modulate here this one by 48 semitones. This one goes up to 100%. Yeah, 1, okay. And now we can change also here with 2 dice things, the modulation amount of the frequency and also modulation amount of the resonance here by the dice. So every time we press this, we get different settings, right? And a different sound. Okay, press the button. Right, then we can also decide here to use a button for that. So we call this we call this generate. Right, we can also use a button for maybe change this from pink noise or from white noise to pink noise. So we call this pink. So we can switch here, right? We can also use a button to change the noise to stereo. Stereo noise. And so on. So you can create all kinds of buttons here to change up the flow of this. You can also give it a try now here again. Different sound. I need to change actually this to a button to trigger this randomize. Yeah, that's the big drawback here. We don't have actually a trigger button as a macro or as a modulator here. We have to rely basically on a 2-state button. So we have click once and the second time to actually trigger something. So now we can generate here. Okay, so we can also use here an EQ at the end to maybe low cut, because with pink noise you get the whole spectrum of sound. So we maybe only want to have here basically the upper half of the frequency spectrum. This is something you could do. Maybe use a macro for that. Start at C1. And then we go up here to whatever, 1K. So let's go back to 48, round number. So we can change that. What we also can do is inside of the grid here, maybe go to a chorus to make this spread out a bit wider, or make the stereo even wider. Or use phaser, why not? So you can also use dice here for that to change how much the phaser is changing the signal. Maybe also here the speed setting, and maybe also the depth of this, maybe the color too. Let's use a different one, and the color and the feedback. And I mean, why not the algorithm here for that? Also nice. Yeah. So now every time we press the generate, we also change the phaser setting. Okay, so you get a nice riser sound every time you press the button here. It's perfectly in sync. You just open up basically here the preset. You call this one riser, whatever. Save riser tutorial. I'll put this also on my Patreon. FX fast. Creates risers or impacts. Yeah, let's try the impacts. I mean, it's not really impact. There needs to be some kick drum in there for impact, but it's just a direction we change. Oh, it's actually there. Okay. If you don't want to bounce this and only want to have basically a riser at a certain point in your arrangement, you can use the automation. That's what I usually do, because I'm lazy. So I'm saying I'll put the volume down here everywhere I don't need it, and just put it up here, right? So this is something you could do. We can also just say, instead of using this play button here, so we mute the audio every time we hit stop, we can also say we want to use a gate signal, a gate in. So we only let audio pass through this whole sequence when there is a gate input. So what we need to do is to create just some kind of clip and some note to actually make this audible, right here. And then we have to see here if we actually change somewhere here the pitch with the pre-chord. No, it's actually everything is the same. Oh, we need to disable this. So I just look here for pre-chords, so to disable pre-chords, so the gate or the pitch doesn't change anything. Okay, that's it. And you can see here now it's muted because there is no gate. There's no note there. So you can change with the note where you want to play this riser. And it doesn't matter which pitch you use. It's just that it is at least some note in there. And this note then triggers here basically the gate. This gives out a 1, as you can see here, and switches the output on. And then you can hear something. You can also use here maybe a reverb on the post FX. Maybe you want to have it a bit more dry to ring out a bit better. Give it a bit more depth. Alright, something like this. And then you hit save. Save as a preset. You can see it's not really that complicated. We basically just have here a small little sequence patch where we use the phase input as a signal to kind of change the loudness and some of the parameters in here, or to sequence it basically. We have a direction thing here where we can switch between reverse and, you know, the normal ramp signal. We have some bend things in here. We can bend the signal to make it a bit more slowly fading in or faster fading in. Of course, you can use much more of these phase tools here, right? There's much more. You can also use a mirror here to make multiple of these, to have these kind of sweeps here in between. So there's all kinds of stuff you can do, get creative with this. And then here down here we generate noise. We modulate the noise with LFOs. Whoops. And also the output here with the phaser. And then we use here this randomizing battery of dice modules to modulate all these parameters. And we also make sure to stay in sync here by just modulating, you know, the quantizing timings here from half node to, I think, 32 node grid. So everything is in sync, even though you randomize heavily, right? And you can create this nice kind of sweeps and put them in your tracks, or maybe create a sample library or whatever and sell it for 20 bucks and get rich. But that's not what I want to do. I want to share these nice little helper tools here on Bitwig and on YouTube for Bitwig, so you can create this for yourself. So you can see it's not really complicated to create this, save it as a preset, and every time you need a riser or an impact, you just recall this preset and use it in your track. So we can go back here to this and maybe use our new. This one is actually better than my old one. I was probably lazy. So use this riser here. Oh, we need to put in here at least one note, right? Maybe put a peak limiter here to make this a bit louder, generate something new. Also here, I'm using basically the full frequency range, right? So we modulate basically from here all the way up to here, which is maybe too high for the endpoint of the riser. Back to C1. Maybe pull this down to here, so we only go to that to 1K, where we, you know, it's the sweet spot for the ears. It's maybe also a bit too fast, so we go to 4 bars. Or maybe 8 bars. Too much reverb. So I think that's pretty nice to use. So let's bounce this. So we have sweep 1 here. And then we can say we want to use this not here, we want to use this maybe there, at this position, right? And here we create another one, a different riser. So here we have this one, you can also bounce this out. So you can use different risers at different positions in your song to get some variety in there. Maybe at the end here. So I want to put this tutorial basically in the middle from creating this track. Now we're creating these risers because it's something I really like to do instead of using random sample libraries. I create this from scratch here with my own presets. I probably also have to bounce out here a bit of the end, because there's a ring out here from the reverb, or tail from the reverb. Small one. So yeah, and then you can remove the preset completely and just, you know, use these samples maybe on one track here. Call this rises, and then put it in the background. Save. Okay, so I just want to show you this, how you can do this in the grid easily. Like I said, I share this preset here, also my old preset on Patreon, so you can download this and can try it out for yourself. Or you can rebuild it from this video. I mean, it's just a tutorial and it's not hard to do. It's not that complicated. And it's also nice practice to get, you know, to get used to using the grid for these kind of things. Okay, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, guys. Leave a like if you like the video, if you like the outcome of this. If you have some questions, of course, leave it in the comments. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching. Bye.